Top of the hour right here on Oasis 96.3. It's a Woman of Music Wednesday. And woo-wee, I've got women in the studios with me from the Party for Progress political party in the house. Got to say good morning to the leader, Miss Melissa Gumbs. Good morning to you, Melissa.
Good morning, Elektra. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And also joining her, oh, no, no. We're gonna wait for that. We're gonna wait for that because I want Melissa to introduce her. So we're gonna keep the surprise guest in the back. Okay. So Melissa, let's really get into it. Of course, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And did you think you would be here so quick again?
No, not at all. I
Uh-huh.
mean, there's always in St. Martin the risk of, especially with certain players in the field, there's always the risk of ending back up here.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't think it would happen 17 days into, a new government being established. So yeah, I didn't expect it, but nevertheless, I'm here. Fired up, upset, frustrated, angry, like I think most of the population is, and ready to, I can't cuss on this station, but kick butt.
So I'm wondering, your 2x4 government was set. You guys were ready to rock and roll, and of course, 17 days in, this devastating news. How did that make you feel as a party leader, as part of a coalition? That people already had so much doubts on.
Right. No, it made me feel terrible. I think nobody wants that to happen. Nobody expects such a thing to happen so early in to a government's life. And for me, I was disappointed. Not surprised because I also think I've shared enough about the efforts that were being made by the opposition, well, now opposition, to kind of break the 2x4 together, just kind of sowing the seeds of doubt, and some coming to me and saying, you should have called me first after the election and such. And I'm like, why? I'm like, the people sent a message. They took 2 seats away from one seat away from the other. So that's a message, and I think that that type of message should be respected. Obviously, it was not, and that's okay. That's politics, I guess. But here we are, and I hope that the people will see through all of the fanfare and the songs and the jingles and such, and realize that they need to send maybe a stronger message and take away more seats from those two opposition parties.
Well, I think it's unfortunate for sure because we would love to have sustainability and growth in our community.
Hmm.
But you've heard over the last few, I say, weeks talk about sustainability and 4 years of government, and now your parties have gone into government and discover these things that are unraveling. For the community, it feels like, okay, what's really going on here? Is it that the coalition 2x4 government is making all this stuff up, or trying to throw shade, as they would say, or put
Yeah.
light on, oh, sustainable, but it wasn't sustainable because look at the mess they left behind.
Right.
What do you say about that?
I've said as well publicly, Electra, stability is nice, but stability at all costs, not necessarily. And also you could be stable in a hospital, but you're still in hospital
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. And I think that what is being discovered is that very much the situation has been glossed over, has been prettied up. The reality facing St. Martin as a country from a financial, economic perspective. I think that if we use the measuring sticks that they use to measure progress, not much has actually progressed. We are not a party that measures progress in how much concrete we pour, or how full the nightclubs are, or anything like that. It has to be on how is the average person living, how is the average person doing, can they afford, the basic necessities in life. Is your infrastructure stable? As we can see, the last couple of weeks, it has not been stable. The most critical part of our infrastructure is not stable. And I think that I can only speak from the PFP side concretely. I leave it to the other ministers to bring out what they themselves have said that they are discovering in their tenure. But now that we have sworn in Mr. Patrice Gumbs as Minister of Rami,
Yes.
there will be more coming from within that ministry to shed some light on the reality of the situation.
I think that, of course, all these different types of stuff, especially when somebody starts a new job, you encounter all kinds of things, all kinds of things. And I think it's very important that there's some kind of continuity
Yeah.
in government.
Yep.
With that being said, I'm wondering in my head, as a constituent of St. Martin and a lover of St. Martin, how do you think, or how do you perceive the next snap election could turn out? Because people are disheartened, Melissa.
Yes.
They don't want to hear the same rhetoric every time. Come vote for me. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. What do you tell to a person that, I've heard it all before? I'm tired. I don't want to know nothing,
Yeah.
because the politicians are getting paid and we are suffering, working 2 and 3 jobs. Tell me something to make me feel like I want to vote for a politician this time around.
Yeah. The way I see it, I think it's going to be, as you mentioned, a battle of the rhetoric. And
Uh-huh.
that is something that, we are going to do our utmost best to stay away from. We've been a party that focuses on just telling people the truth and just being honest with them. And that truth can be ugly sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
I think people vote better when they know the truth and they know the facts. And I think too, I urge people, the voting public, to pay attention to what has brought us here. Listen to the persons that had 4 years to resolve many of what you're seeing happen. And then after 17 days, participated in dropping a government that was focused on getting these things done. I don't know anything like that. You can't even get you can't even get a doctor's appointment in 17 days sometimes. You understand? So it's curious to me, um the rhetoric that they are using to justify what has happened and to justify why we're being brought to this again. And I always urge the public to, don't suffer from the short term memory that we've had as a voting population for decades. I think it's time to really critically look at the character of the people that are asking for your vote. I see meet and greets being scheduled, but we met you 6 months ago. You understand? And I think that that is the wool that they should not allow to be pulled over their eyes.
Well, of course, we know that PFP also garnered some extra seats this time around. Minister Plenipotentiary, Mr. Patrice Gumbs, he just came back now to St. Martin, as the candidate minister, Rayon Peterson, was unfortunately not able to, take his seat. How did that make you feel as a party leader, and what went down with our current governor?
Very disappointed as a party leader, as a friend, as somebody who considers Rayon, the brother I never had. I was very disappointed,
Hmm.
and more than a little hurt, because I think, I expect everyone to operate from these high positions of authority, with a view on integrity and ethics, and keeping that balance in check. And I think it's unfortunate that at the time of Rayon's name being submitted, he was actually able to be a minister, but instead we had a very subjective decision from the governor to not sign his national decree and then wait, delaying our democratic process, the formation of a government, delaying that purposefully to wait for this outcome from the Supreme Court. And in discussions with lawyers across the kingdom, they say, maybe in 3 to 5 years there will be a review of this statement from the Supreme Court, and they will provide some more explanation on what is a conviction that could stop you from becoming a minister. Because I think it's important for people to realize that Rayon is not the same as Bram, which is the case in Curacao that was being tested at the Hocharat. Bram was convicted of sexual misconduct. You
Yes.
understand? And Rayon was convicted of a licht mishandling, a light assault on someone, a drunk driver that almost killed him.
Yes.
That's the reality of it. And I think anybody human is going to have that reaction. Somebody almost kills you, you get out, you should give them a shove, which is what it was. And actually, in the video, which is public, he picks the person right back up. In the verdict, it says of the appeal that overturned it, and basically, for us, then when we consulted with lawyers, then they said, yeah, he should have no problem being a minister. You understand? We don't do things half-assed. We always seek consultation from a wide range of professionals. And essentially, it was said, had it not been for the false charge of assault brought to you by the police of St. Martin, that you wouldn't even be here. So I think it's gross injustices that have been perpetrated against Rayon. and that is I think his legal battle to investigate and to fight. But we as a party fully stand behind him as a candidate minister that we put forward, because at the time that his name was put in, he could have been a minister. And actually, for the public to know, we have had people who have become ministers with convictions in this country.
Interesting, very interesting, because I believe that there is no cut clear indications or criteria on how a minister should be selected. Is it not?
Well, actually, and this is why I say it's important to note that at the time of submission, and actually even now, because now even with this Supreme Court opinion, the same individual in Curacao can still be a minister,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm.
based on their national ordinance for screening, future candidate ministers will have a problem.
Okay,
Here,
so in Curacao they have or
they
have
have a screening
organized.
law.
Okay, good.
Yes, we do not have a screening law. Our constitution, our laws that are used when looking at ministers talks about after you've become a minister.
Uh-huh.
If Rayon or anybody, myself, had been sitting as a minister and then received a conviction, then it is actually still up to us to resign, because the constitution says if you have a punishment of a year or more, you should resign.
Mm-hmm.
But if I get convicted of something and it's a 9 month sentence, I could say, no, just no, I'm not resigning. So even that leaves it up to interpretation.
Understood.
We've spoken publicly about the need for a screening law to outline the parameters of what constitutes integrity and ethics when it comes to being a minister. If, for example, you have been found guilty of embezzling money from a government-owned company, let's say, you should not be able to become a minister, because it impacts your integrity
Of
and your
course.
ethics on that level. If you've been found guilty of circumventing policies and giving land away to, your cousin, your brother, your child's mother, without following proper procedures, or doing it as a favor in exchange for something, that is why you should not be a minister, because it's about your integrity and your ethics. Me or anybody reacting in a human way to a drunk driver that almost killed me, that is not a reason to not be a minister.
Understood. Understood. There are lots of course, facets that go in line with becoming a minister, becoming a parliamentarian, the rules of order, the way how you conduct yourself, your
Mhm.
character, good governance principles, all that good stuff. And I know that it's not easy being a politician. There's a lot of politicking and
Mm.
politicking. But then I ask myself, to what extent, to the detriment of our community or to the upliftment and growth of our community?
I think your surprise guest can shed some light on that.
Yes.
'Cause
Well, I give you the floor to
Definitely.
introduce your newest candidate.
yes,
Go ahead.
it gives me great pleasure to be here to introduce our newest candidate on the Party for Progress slate, and that is, of course, my friend, my fellow Jedi, my fellow Virgo, is the voice, the sounding board for 4 years in the chaos of Parliament, and that is Solange Ludmila Duncan. Yeah, you want to
All
take a
right.
bite? Take
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
bite?
yeah, let's go.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Welcome, Solange.
Thank you.
It's a
Good
pleasure to
morning.
have you here in a different capacity, I guess.
Yes, yep.
You're the newest political candidate for Party for Progress.
Yes.
And of course, before we go forward, we want to go backward. And we want
Hmm.
to know, for those of them who don't know, why did you leave the National Alliance?
Ooh,
Why?
To the
let's start
point,
with
I
that.
told you.
We want to get into the nitty gritty of things, because I think it's an honest question,
Yeah.
and people want to know. Okay, Solange was with National Alliance, now she left, now she's going with Party for Progress. Clear that up for us once and for all.
Okay, so there's a couple of things, right? And it's a very good question, and it's something that everyone always wants to know. First of all, the party, and I am going to be open and honest here, especially with you, Electra, the party is not what it used to be.
Okay.
So this isn't a national alliance of 2010.
Mhm.
And the bones of it isn't the SPA that my family grew up supporting, right? It
Understood.
became National Alliance. So the party itself has changed. This party was once a party that built roads, schools, was about social development. And in my opinion, based on my experience, it is not that party anymore. There are a couple of issues that I experienced. One, there were a number of, in my opinion, unethical decisions made. And I'm going to be
Okay.
very, very
Transparent.
detailed and transparent about it. For one, the land policy, there was issues with how land was issued.
Okay.
We saw a court case come out of that where the judge said, Minister, what you're doing is not necessarily illegal, but it is unethical.
So
You
innocent Minister Egbert Durand, is that the minister you're
Yes, the
referring to?
former minister of
Okay,
Romy.
just to clarify.
Yes, and the judgment was you have to create a proper land policy that is fair,
Mhm.
that is transparent, that is open, because it is not about a few people on the island, it is about everyone. And the PFP brought a motion of disapproval, which I was open with the coalition in saying I am going to support this motion
Mhm.
because it is about being integral and ethical in your decision making.
Okay.
There were some number of other issues with the ombudsman that we went through, and so there was things that happened, and I said after a while, you know what, I am not in alignment in some of the most important values that I hold with the party, and I have to leave. What was important to note though is that I did not drop the government when I left the party, and I was very clear about supporting any piece of legislation that came to government that was in the best interest of the people.
Yes.
I would support it, and that
Understood.
was something that I told everyone. And so I went independent. And at the same time, too, especially over the last year,
Mhm.
I felt like I had to step back. I was very clear that I would not run in the January elections. I was not that I didn't say that I was resigning from politics, but I did say that I didn't want to run in the January elections because I had to step back, reflect, and analyze not only my tenure as a member of parliament, what I could achieve and what I couldn't, but the whole entire system itself, what you just spoke about. Why is it that people come into this system, that people become politicians and they change, they don't do what they say they were going to do? There are often times when in parliament amendments are passed that do not get implemented at all.
Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
you you see, yeah, but that amendment passed, paternity leave is one of them. That MP Leonard, 4 years, 5 years later, you realize, wait a minute, government hasn't put the amendment into action. So it was as if it never happened. And that is
Understood.
our problem. And I needed to step back and reflect
Yeah.
and analyze, look at what needs to change, what needs to be focused on. And when government fell, like Melissa said, I was angry and frustrated as well. I was actually looking forward to this coalition, uh, getting the opportunity to govern. I knew that the people would have shifted and have wanted to see an alternative in government because that's where the policy making happens. That's where the country is ran from government. So I was happy and I was looking forward to the new coalition. And when government fell, I was upset. I was disillusioned. Honestly, Electra, it was a day before I was getting ready to purchase tickets for my family to move to the Netherlands because I wanted to
Oh,
pursue a PhD.
okay.
So I do believe that we need more researchers in this country. I've always wanted to do my PhD, and of course, on St. Martin issues. And I was getting ready to purchase a ticket. I got a call from Melissa, and I had to again take some time to think about whether I was going to leave my country in one of the worst states it has ever been in, or was I going to come and join the good fight one more time and do what I could do for my people. And that's why I'm here.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, that's a mouthful.
Yeah,
Solange. That's
Now
sorry.
you were clear.
no, but it's good
Yeah.
to hear these honest opinions, experiences from the people that have been elected to represent us. Because sometimes it's unfortunate that when our politicians they go into office, like you say, people have put in their trust, their love, their hopes, their dreams in these people who will have voices that will be their representative in government. And when things don't go well, and these same people that have put them there go knocking on the doors, there's nobody at the other side to answer the door. So it's very disheartening, and it's very how you say, refreshing to hear you sit here and candidly speak about your experience. There's no
Yeah.
politicking or politicking going on here. You speak of the heart. I can sense that this openness is something that is definitely needed, especially because our country is currently going through a crisis where people have to work 2 and 3 jobs
Yeah.
just to maybe put food on the table, while our politicians are getting so much money whether they work or not?
And I think,
Go
if I
ahead,
may,
Melissa.
sorry, I think it's also important to note that, from the very beginning, you could say, or you could argue that Mila's principles were in line with PFP, because if the public will recall, in 2020, when COVID was about to ramsack the economy of this country, we were the ones that brought forward a motion to cut our salaries.
Yes, I remember that.
I went to her. I said, hey, I think that you could find yourself in this motion. Let me know if you would be willing to support it. And I think she also had a motion that she was bringing. I said, okay, I'll support yours, you support mine.
Mhm.
And ultimately, politics kind of won the day, where she texted me and I was like, oh no. But it essentially turned
Yeah.
into, I can't support your motion. And then, they kind of used her motion, changed it into something it was not meant to be, to
Yeah.
kind of undercut the PFP
Yeah.
motion of cutting our salaries. And, I think that, people were like, oh, you were just trying to make an empty gesture. But I think Mila, myself, Rayon at the time, and MP Westcott, who voted for it, we looked at it as, you have to stand in solidarity with the community, because we kind of knew it was coming. And I think that is also part of wanting to govern. It's anybody who is too eager to go into government or so, I always look at them very strange, because I'm like, do you know the weight of the responsibility that you are taking on?
Mhm.
It may look nice, cutting ribbons, picking up rocks on the side of the road. Oh, look, I'm working. That may look cute, but that is not what the job is. The job is sacrifice, personal sacrifice, even, and the willingness to take that leadership role on and say, this is how I'm going to lead by example, and I need the country to follow.
Understood. We're currently going through the GB crisis.
Yes.
I mean, you
Yes.
can jump
Yes.
in right after. But I want us to tackle that a little bit, because, that's the big conversation everybody's having. And it's good to hear different points of view. So go ahead, Ludmila.
No, so we've talked about solutions for our energy for years, for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. We've heard of waste to energy, solar. We don't have a national solar policy. We've heard of all of these ideas. What we have an issue with is just effective decision making. We haven't made decisions in this country, proper decisions. We have also seen a lack of proper corporate governance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen, and articles have come out about the fact that government needs to stop meddling in some of our government owned companies, and that supervisory boards need to be properly staffed and managed by persons who have the competence. What we are also seeing, especially let's say in the ministry, which I know that Melissa can touch on, we have never seen whole ministries with like 20 something vacancies empty,
Yep.
not being led.
Let me just clarify. Are you referring to the VROMI ministry that is currently, like, they have so many vacancies? A lot of people are not there where they're supposed to be. No SGs, no this, no that. That's what you're referring to?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. But in the other ministries
There's
too.
also
And
gaps.
besides the lack of effective policy making and management, there are levels of toxicity that we haven't experienced before. And I was a policy advisor from since 2010. I worked in a couple of different ministries. So I can say that I know how government at least started out 14 years ago and what it's become. And that's why right now we have an issue. We cannot continue to be on autopilot in this country
Yeah.
anymore. We have to make proper decisions, and we have to be more integral in our decision making and ethical. So for me, it's not even about what solutions we have. It's about making proper decisions and doing what is
Yeah.
right for the people. We cannot continue like this anymore.
All right, Melissa. I mean, of course, that there's so many aspects that we can touch on with regards to, social development,
Mhm.
healthcare, good governance on our politicians. But what would be the how you say the drop that makes the bucket run over, to say, well, people, this is what needs to happen for to put St. Martin back on the right track? What would you say as a leader of a party? What do you see as a vision for St. Martin to come back on the right track?
I think it's very much what Mila has been saying and what we have been saying since 2020. It is about ethical decision making, the testicular fortitude to say the truth. That's really what it is. You cannot continue to just sugarcoat things. A lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. At the end of the day, you have to be honest with the people, and that, I think, is what sets us apart, not in a good way, from many of our fellow Caribbean islands and countries, wherein, eventually they will say to the people, this is what it is. And most times their people are well informed, their people have information with which to, plan their lives, and plan not just daily life but also plan long term. Here, because it is ad hoc, because it is very much, well, I need to at least shine until the next vote, shine until the next election. I need to make decisions that are going to put me in a favorable light with the country. And I've heard it said by former ministers from many different governments that you can't do that because there's an election coming up next year. No, I'm sorry. The tough decision has to be taken. It has to be explained. We cannot continue treating the people like they're stupid, and that is what has been happening, I think, systematically in this country. It is not an accident that the critical ministries are left understaffed.
Hmm.
Okay, because if it's understaffed, then you can say, well, then I guess my cabinet got to handle everything. And we need to get away from that, because that level of control is not what is meant to happen. There has to be checks and balances throughout. I think, Electra, we have had so many, what I thought was the last drop in the bucket to really shift the way that this country votes, the way that this country is governed, and it has not happened as yet. I thought Irma would have been it. Actually, I thought Hurricane Lewis would have been it. It wasn't. I thought Irma would have been it. It wasn't. I thought COVID would have been it. It wasn't.
Do you
And
think?
now our most critical piece of infrastructure, the only electricity provider in the country. I hope that this is it, because this is not something that has popped up
Just now.
just now. It's not something that popped up in 17 days. You can lay all of this load shedding at the feet of decisions that have been taken over the last 4 years, over the last 6 years, over the last 14 years. When you see the former CEO of GB basically confirming that as developments come online, the grid is under strain, something that we have said 4 years in Parliament, that we were called crazy for, that we were insulted for, made fun of, even called, enemies of
Mm-hmm.
progress. Um, Progress is not measured by how much concrete you pour for foreign developers. Progress is measured by, is everything contributing to where people in Dutch Quarter, people in Middle Region, people in Sucker Garden, people in KB, Colby, etc., can they afford groceries? Can they afford a roof over their house? Can they afford to feed their children before they go to school? Can our schools afford to keep our children cool during the day? Can our schools afford to have teachers' assistants that can help with big classroom sizes and make sure that we don't have the failing rates that we've been having? That is the reality of it. So I think that this right here, GB, is the should be the linchpin that is pulled, that basically pushes the country to a point of, we can't continue like this.
Do you think, Ludmila, I mean, you talked about different policies being in place as you've been an advisor
Yeah.
for various ministries over the years. Do you think that the country needs some kind of political awareness or teachings of how governments work, or teachings about how to be a politician, or the basic structure of parliament and government and trias politicas and all that stuff? Do you think that these things need to be really taught as of from primary school if
Of
we want to
course.
build future
100%.
leaders?
Of course. I
100%.
think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. One of my biggest motions was about heritage preservation, culture, and civic education. Like, we need to think
Yeah.
about who is a St. Martiner as a citizen. Our identity, that's a whole other discussion, but as a citizen, because what we're seeing now, especially over the last few years, is destruction of our natural heritage as well. And
A
there's a
few monuments
petition
have
right
been
now.
destroyed,
Yeah,
yes.
and there's a petition now by the Simpson Bay community, and they are vehemently against the continued overdevelopment of Simpson Bay. So who is the development for? If the people don't want it, if it's putting a strain on our infrastructure and electricity, who is the development for? And these are issues that need to be solved by a government of competent professionals that
Yeah.
know what they're doing, that are not about putting money in their pockets for the on behalf of the developers. And that's what needs to change. And our people need to learn that they have a role, they have a say. While I was in Parliament too, as chair of the petitions committee, we did a small campaign you have a constitutional right to petition not only your government but your parliament and
Yeah.
say, listen, we have an issue with what is happening. You have a right to be heard. You have a right to be answered as well, because that is another issue. People write letters and they never get responses,
It's
and
unfortunate.
they have to we have to start demanding and holding our people accountable in this country. Then is when we're going to see change, and without the fear of being um,
Intimidated.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
intimidated.
Fired.
That
Yeah.
happens a lot
Yeah.
in this country. People are scared. I heard a group saying, we want to strike, but we're afraid of what our employers will do. The time for that is over now.
Yeah.
We have to hold our people accountable. We have to hold government accountable, and we're and especially the PFP, and that is one thing that I admired about them. You will be held accountable. We will hold ourselves accountable, and we will hold others accountable as well,
Yeah.
Okay.
because at the end of the day, they're the responsible ones. Yes.
Well, we are almost out of time. And of course, I want to give you the opportunity, Melissa, being the party leader for Party for Progress, on, what can we expect in the next several weeks for the snap election that will be a little different qua election style,
Yeah.
marketing style. What can the electorate expect?
No, they can definitely expect to see us out and about in their neighborhoods.
Okay.
We will be patronizing local, so district businesses, trying to just touch base with the people. I think people are exhausted with the rallies, etc. We don't do that anyway, but we're just trying to go to the people directly, again, and just engage with them. Also, as a party, we've made a decision to not put up any posters. It is hurricane season, so that doesn't make any sense. So you won't be seeing our faces in the traditional sense on the road, but definitely making use of whatever is available to get ourselves out there. And yeah, visiting fine folks like yourself on the radio
You get
to get
first.
that message across. And I think,
Understood.
I and again, keeping it to the brand of honesty and just very plain, with the vision of building a St. Martin that is based and founded on ethical decision making, integrity, accountability across the board, even if it means that people from years ago have to be held accountable, because that is also part of nation building. That is also part of the reckoning that you have to come to as a country, making sure that people take pride in their districts, and in our heritage, and also making sure that in the truest sense of the word, St. Martin continues to be for St. Martiners. I think that people talk a good game about it, but when you're passing permits for people, for specific developers, left, right, and center, to just pour concrete in this country, that you're not for St. Martin. I'm very sorry.
Hmm.
Okay. Mila, any last words you would like to share with the listeners?
So no, I just want to thank you, Electra, for having me. And just a reminder to everyone that I've spent years serving this community in a number of different ways. So being an MP, but also too with my foundation, a lot of nonprofit work, and I took some time to reflect, to step back. But I am back in the good fight, because this country is worth fighting for, and I really hope that people understand that the selling of your vote, the selling out of this country is what has gotten us to this point right now, and we can't continue. So I'm looking forward to August 19th, being a part of the Party for Progress, a party that I believe has the professionals that will make a difference in this country. And yeah, looking forward to August 19th.
All right, there you have it. Party for Progress, leader of the party, Melissa Gumbs. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me this morning.
Thank
Also,
you.
Miss Solange, Ludmila, Duncan, thank you for
Thank
joining us
you,
and being
Electra.
candid with the listeners here at Oasis 96.3. I wish you the best of luck, and you know where you can come if you want to speak candidly with me right
Yes.
here on Oasis 96.3.
Thank you.
Thank
There you go.
you.